Cell therapies have become a vital and integral component of medicine today. But experts say that significant challenges like safety, efficacy and costs are preventing its widespread adoption. So to overcome those challenges, the Singapore-MIT Alliance for Research and Technology has launched a new research group called Critical Analytics for Manufacturing Personalized Medicine, or well, for short, CAMP. And here to tell us more, we're joined by Professor Krystyn Van Vliet, co-lead principal investigator of SMART CAMP, and she's also a professor for materials science and biological engineering at MIT. Thank you very much, Professor Van Vliet, for joining us today. First up, what do you hope to see or get most out of this partnership?
Well, this partnership is very important because this is MIT Singapore Research Enterprise, SMART, and CAMP within that is going to have the opportunity to address some critical bottlenecks in cell therapy manufacturing. So, as you said, there are many reasons why it's difficult to make cell therapies effective and safe today. But part of those reasons are that we lack information and we lack technologies that make it possible to produce this kind of medicine, as well as we produce older, more established kind of medicines like aspirin or antibodies. So one of the key outcomes is that we'll have new technologies that make it faster, safer, perhaps less expensive to produce cell therapies. But the other key outcome is that we'll have a workforce that is prepared for that kind of interdisciplinary industry, because it affects the clinics, it affects companies, and obviously it affects patients.
Okay, so saying all that, give us an example of, some of the conditions that cell therapy can be used for.
So one example that people are somewhat familiar with is when you have a bone marrow transplant, or you've heard of someone having a bone marrow transplant, they've actually had a stem cell transplant of a type. Another example that you might have heard about is what's called immuno-oncology, or using your own immune cells to address cancer and fight cancer in your body by changing those cells outside the body and putting them back in. So when people hear about CAR T-cell therapy being used for cancer, those T cells are engineered outside the body to fight cancer. So that's one example. And then another example that is under quite a bit of study is using stem cells that come from bone marrow, for example, to repair aging issues such as the cartilage in your knee.
Okay, so but then the question everybody has would be, how safe is it? I mean, that's like the #1 question.
Right. So I think safety is a chief concern, but there's really two concerns about safety. One is being able to predict and understand that when you put those cells in the body, you know what they're going to do, what functions they're going to have, where you put them. So that's one part of safety. The other part of safety is to make sure that you're only putting the cells that you want as medicine in the body, and you're not accidentally adding, for example, bacteria that would infect the patient. And SMART CAMP will address both aspects of that. Safety from being able to predict what the cells will do when you put them in the patient, and also making sure that the only things that go into the patient are the cells that you intended. And both of those require new kinds of technology to do that correctly and quickly.
Well, with new technology always comes, the price hike. Everyone's always worried about the cost of it. So how challenging is it to make it, affordable at the same time? Because it's also new at the same time.
That's right. So it is possible to actually bring down the cost of cell therapy by bringing down the cost of manufacturing those medicines. That's more complicated. That's a multifaceted decision by, for example, the drug companies that are making those medicines. But one of the ways that SMART CAMP is addressing that is that automation of those processes will reduce the risk and also reduce the hours required, and that has the potential to bring down the cost quite a bit. But that's one of the challenges that SMART CAMP will be addressing.
All right, thank you so much for coming in and speaking to us today. We've been speaking there with Professor Krystyn Van Vliet from MIT.